You ever notice how people wander through life like they're waiting for someone to tap them on the shoulder and say, "You, yes, you, it's your turn now." Funny thing is, most never hear it. Not because no one's calling, but because they're too busy drowning in noise, the doubts, the failures, the whispers telling them they're not enough. But tonight, something shifted. Something strange. Like the universe leaned in a little closer, lowered its voice, and whispered your name with a grin, as if it knows a secret about you that you haven't discovered yet. You ever notice how a single word can change everything? One name spoken at the right moment, and suddenly the world doesn't feel quite the same. It's not loud, it's not dramatic. It doesn't arrive with fireworks or a marching band. No, it sneaks in like a shadow, brushing past your mind, settling into the corners you thought were safe. And yet, that one word, that one name, has a weight you can feel, pulsing under your ribs, crawling along your spine, tugging at something you've been trying to ignore. It's funny how fragile we are, how a simple sound can make the skin crawl and the heart jump, how it reminds you that you're alive and that you've been asleep when a higher power, fate, destiny, or whatever you want to call it, calls your name. It's not just a call, it's a spotlight, a magnifying glass pressed against your life, showing you the cracks, the shadows, the truths you've tried to hide from yourself. And you notice it immediately, even if you don't admit it. Your chest tightens, your breathing catches, your mind snaps to attention. It's as if the universe itself leaned close enough to whisper, "Pay attention, this is for you." And that's when the game changes. That's when you realize everything you thought was random has been a setup, a series of steps leading you straight to this moment. People ignore these things all the time. They pretend the tickle in their gut, the whisper in the wind, the sudden shiver down their spine isn't really there. They tell themselves it's coincidence, imagination, paranoia. And the funny thing? That's exactly what they think, until the moment hits with a force that no pretending can hide. And by then it's too late to act the same way you would have if you'd listened from the start. The name doesn't just echo. It lingers. It resonates. It burns. And when you finally recognize it, when you finally feel it in every nerve, every cell, you realize that recognition isn't passive. It's a call to rise, to step, to do something you've been avoiding because you were scared, lazy, or simply comfortable. Comfort is the enemy here. Comfort is the soft blanket that lets you sleep while opportunity knocks. Comfort is the chain that keeps your legs from moving when everything in the universe is pointing at you. But this moment, this whisper of your name, it doesn't negotiate with comfort. It laughs at hesitation. It doesn't care about your excuses, your doubts, your not yet, or maybe later. You ever notice how fear creeps in at these moments? Fear is always there, lurking. It's the first thing that stands in the way when you're called. You're not ready, it says. It's too much. You might fail. And for a second, that voice feels powerful. That voice feels convincing. But that's only because it's being compared to the weight of what you're ignoring. The truth is, if you step into this, if you move toward the name spoken for you, fear becomes fuel. Fear becomes a spark. Fear becomes the signal that you're finally awake. And there's something intoxicating about knowing you've been singled out, even in a whisper. It's thrilling, terrifying, and infuriating all at once, because suddenly, everything you've done, everything you've endured, every misstep, every heartbreak, every failure, it feels like it was leading to this single instant. Like the universe, chaotic and cruel, has decided to bend its energy toward you, and now it's waiting to see what you'll do. And here's the twist. It doesn't matter if you feel ready. It doesn't matter if you feel worthy. That doesn't change a thing. The name has been spoken. The call has been made. The stage has been set. And when a call comes like this, it's not just about being noticed. It's about being chosen, picked out of the noise and the chaos, pulled from the crowd of faces that blend into one another. It's personal, precise. It's a cosmic spotlight illuminating a path you weren't even sure existed. And the power of that realization is intoxicating. Because now you know there's a design, a reason, a force pulling you forward whether you understand it or not. And it's louder than your excuses, sharper than your fear, more relentless than your hesitation. When a higher power calls your name, the world shifts, whether you want it to or not. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't wait for you to feel ready. It doesn't care if you stumble. It simply shows up, points, and says, move. And the question becomes, will you answer, or will you pretend the whisper never happened? Because the whisper is the start, not the finish. It's the spark before the fire, the tremor before the quake, the pull before the leap. It's the first step, and everything that follows depends on whether you take it. You ever notice how a single call can feel like it's shaking the entire universe? One name spoken at the right moment, and suddenly everything around you seems sharper, heavier, more alive. It's not loud. It doesn't bang on doors or blow up in your face. No, it creeps in quietly, brushing against your thoughts, slipping through the cracks in your attention, and somehow manages to find the part of you that's been hiding, pretending, sleeping. And when it lands, when it hits that hidden spot, you feel it immediately, a spark, a tremble, a sudden awareness that says, asterisk, this is for you, asterisk. And it's terrifying because it knows more about you than you do about yourself. People often ignore the signs that call them to rise. They see the opportunity. They feel the nudge. They sense the pull, and they rationalize it away. It's nothing. I'm not ready. It's probably a coincidence. But it's never nothing. It's never random. It's a deliberate touch on the shoulder from fate itself. And the longer you pretend it's not real, the more insistent it becomes, tightening its grip on your awareness, making the hairs on your arms rise, making your chest feel too small for the heart trying to escape. And you know it's real, don't you? That tiny spark of recognition that refuses to be ignored. The moment your name is spoken is the moment everything can change. It doesn't matter how lost you've been, how broken, how unsure. That call slices through all of it like a knife, exposing the rawness you've been hiding, even from yourself. Suddenly, the excuses you've relied on for so long crumble. The not yet you've been repeating to delay action suddenly feels like a betrayal. Fear tries to speak louder than the whisper, but it falters. It falters because something bigger, something sharper, something deliberate is forcing your attention, pulling you forward whether you want to move or not. And there's something almost cruel about it. The universe calls you by name in a way that feels intimate, precise, personal, and you feel this weight, this pulse, this undeniable presence pushing against the edges of your mind. You can't look away. You can't pretend it's coincidence. And yet, so many people do. They shuffle along, blind to the gravity of their moment, hoping the call will repeat itself, hoping it'll get louder, hoping they'll somehow feel ready if they wait a little longer. But the truth is, readiness is an illusion. There is no perfect time. There is no safe moment. The call demands attention now, before hesitation has a chance to sink its claws deeper. And hesitation Oh, hesitation is the cruelest companion. It whispers, "You're not ready. You'll fail. Wait." It dresses itself as wisdom, as caution, as reason. But it's nothing more than fear dressed up in polite clothing. And the universe? It doesn't negotiate with fear. It doesn't pause for hesitation. It only nudges, prods, pushes, until you either answer or crumble. That whisper, that spark, that call, it doesn't wait. It doesn't care if you doubt yourself. It doesn't care if you stumble. It's relentless. And that's why it's terrifying. Because it forces you to confront yourself, forces you to see your potential, forces you to face the truth you've been dodging for years. You know what's dangerous about ignoring it? Not the moment itself, but what it reveals about you. Ignoring the call is choosing comfort over awakening. It's choosing sleep over fire. It's choosing the mundane over the extraordinary. And the universe notices, fate notices, destiny notices. That spark that touched you, that name that called you, doesn't simply vanish. It lingers, waiting for the smallest crack in your armor, waiting for the next moment you convince yourself you're ready, waiting for the instant you finally decide to stop pretending. And when you finally feel it, when the recognition pierces the fog of your everyday life, it's exhilarating and terrifying all at once. Because suddenly, all the chaos, all the mistakes, all the moments of despair, all the nights of doubt, they weren't meaningless. They were preparations. They were the groundwork for the moment that matters most. The call doesn't just arrive randomly. It's precise, it's deliberate, it's personal, and it's waiting to see if you have the courage to move. When your name is spoken by destiny, the world shifts beneath your feet. The air feels sharper, the noises are louder, the edges of reality seem more distinct, and the weight in your chest, that pressure, it's the universe leaning close enough to say, asterisk, this is your moment, asterisk. And the question is simple. Will you respond? Or will you let the spark fade into nothing because fear convinced you that waiting was safer than leaping? You ever notice how moments don't arrive with neon signs or drum rolls? They come quiet, almost polite, like a shadow brushing past your shoulder. And if you're not paying attention, they disappear before you even realize they were there. That's how life works, especially the important stuff, the things meant only for you. They don't shout, they whisper. They slip through the cracks of your distraction, curling around the edges of your mind until finally, if you're awake enough to notice, you feel it. That pulse, that tingle, that sense that something is shifting in the air around you, something that doesn't care about your comfort, your timing, or your excuses. It only cares that you hear it, that you respond, that you move. People miss these things all the time. They see the signs, they feel the pull, they sense the tension, and they convince themselves it's coincidence, imagination, or paranoia. They pretend the little tremor in their chest isn't a warning, the tiny tug in their gut isn't a signal, the sudden clarity in their mind isn't a call to action. And while they pretend, life waits. Patient, quiet, calculating, waiting for the moment they'll finally realize that ignoring the whisper doesn't erase the truth. It only gives it time to grow sharper, louder, and more insistent. And here's the cruel beauty of it. Whispers carry power, not in the way you expect. They don't force your hand immediately. They insinuate themselves into your awareness, winding through your thoughts until you can't shake them, until you start to see patterns you've been blind to, until you feel pressure where there wasn't pressure before, until your heart starts racing in response to a call you've been ignoring. The whisper is precise. It's surgical. It knows exactly which parts of you to touch, which fears to stir, which desires to awaken. And it waits, quietly, watching to see if you'll rise or retreat. Hesitation is the first obstacle. People hesitate because listening to a whisper demands courage. It demands a willingness to step into the unknown, to face the uncomfortable, to confront the parts of themselves they've been running from. Not now, they tell themselves. Maybe later. But the universe doesn't negotiate. It doesn't pause because you're scared. It doesn't care if your timing is convenient. The whisper becomes sharper with each delay, pressing against your mind like a finger tracing the edge of a knife, reminding you that the moment doesn't bend to your comfort. And fear, oh, fear loves these moments. It seeps in under the skin, wrapping around the whisper like a cloak, trying to disguise itself as reason. You're not ready, it says. It's too much. You'll fail. And for a second, that voice sounds convincing. But the whisper, the subtle pull you feel, is louder than fear if you listen. It cuts through the excuses, the doubts, the layers of denial you've built around yourself. It doesn't care about your hesitation. It doesn't care about your excuses. It doesn't care about your sleep or your distractions. It wants only your attention, your action, your recognition of the path that is meant for you. And when you finally start paying attention, the world shifts. The air feels heavier, sharper. Sounds are clearer, colors more distinct. That tiny tremor in your chest grows into a pressure that you can no longer ignore. The whisper wasn't a suggestion. It was a signal, a warning, a call. And the magnitude of it grows with every second you wait, every moment you doubt, every time you pretend it's nothing. Because what you ignore in its early stages only grows stronger. It grows precise. It grows inevitable. It waits for you to make a choice. Will you rise to it? Or will you let it slip past into chaos? Ignoring the call doesn't erase it. It follows you. It waits. It sharpens. And the longer you hesitate, the heavier it becomes. And when it finally erupts, when the whisper has grown to a roar because you refuse to acknowledge it, it doesn't ask if you're ready. It doesn't care if you're strong. It only demands that you face it, that you act, that you accept the moment you spent years dodging. The whisper is patient, yes, but relentless. It knows your patterns. It knows your fears. It knows every excuse you've ever told yourself, and yet it persists. It calls your name softly, insistently, until the moment comes where the only choice left is to answer. And that is the terrifying beauty of it, how something so quiet, so small, so seemingly insignificant, can carry the weight of a universe that refuses to let you ignore your destiny. You ever notice how hesitation has this strange way of sneaking into your life, dressed up like wisdom, like it sits on your shoulder, whispering softly, wait, maybe later, think about it. And for a moment, you actually believe it's protecting you. Protecting you from what? From the very thing that's meant to change you? The irony is delicious. Hesitation isn't protection, it's a thief. It robs you of your momentum, your fire, your chance to rise, all while smiling like it's doing you a favor. And the worst part is, it doesn't feel dangerous at first. It feels safe. It feels polite. It feels like the sensible choice. When life calls, when destiny leans in close and whispers your name, hesitation is the first thing that rears its ugly head. It knows it's about to be unmasked. It knows its reign is threatened. It starts planting seeds of doubt in your mind. Are you ready? Can you handle this? Maybe it's too much for you. And those seeds grow quickly if you're not careful. One tiny moment of hesitation multiplies into hours, into days, into years of delay. Suddenly, the path that was meant to be open to you seems distant, clouded, unreachable, and all because you let a soft, cowardly voice dictate your actions. Hesitation loves to wrap itself in excuses. I need more time. I'm not strong enough yet. It's not the right moment. And for a fleeting second, you nod along. You justify your pause. You pat yourself on the back for being responsible, careful, wise. But the truth? Those excuses are lies. Lies designed to keep you small, to keep you comfortable, to keep you from stepping into the version of yourself that was waiting for this very moment. Hesitation is a silent killer, and the worst part is, it's polite about it. You know the part most people don't get? Hesitation doesn't just slow you down. It doesn't just make you miss chances. It erodes confidence. It chips away at courage. Every time you pause when action is required, every time you let fear take the wheel, it leaves a mark. You start doubting not just the moment, but yourself. You question your worth, your strength, your ability to rise. And that's when hesitation isn't just a delay, it's a cage. A cage made of your own excuses, your own fears, your own indecision. And you carry it everywhere, thinking you're free. When the universe calls your name, hesitation is the thing you have to silence first. It's louder than the whispers of opportunity. It's heavier than the pull of destiny. It's the voice telling you to stay small while the world has already singled you out for greatness. The irony is exquisite. You have everything you need to move forward, yet you hesitate, pretending that comfort matters more than courage. But courage is loud, even in the quietest moments. Courage is the thing that turns a whisper of fate into action. And hesitation trembles at that sound. And here's the thing about hesitation. It isn't random. It doesn't appear by accident. It creeps in precisely when you're on the verge of something big. Right when the universe has leaned in close and said, "This is yours." Right when every instinct, every nerve, every fiber of your being knows the moment is real. Hesitation sees that spark and wants to snuff it out before it grows into fire. It's smart, patient, relentless, and if you let it, it will steal the moment entirely, leaving you with nothing but regret. The strangest part is how easy it is to justify. I'm waiting for the right time. I need more preparation. Maybe tomorrow. But tomorrow is a lie. The right time is now, in this tremble, in this pull, in this heartbeat. Hesitation thrives on waiting. It thrives on convincing you that delay equals safety, when in reality, delay is decay. It eats away at the edges of your courage until all that's left is a hollow version of yourself staring at the moment that passed by. And fear, that constant companion, always sneaks in next. It loves hesitation because it knows hesitation does its work for it. You're not ready. You'll fail. You can't do this. And for a moment, that voice sounds louder than the call, louder than the pull, louder than destiny itself. But that's only until you remember. The whisper of opportunity doesn't lie. The pull of purpose doesn't hesitate. The moment is yours if you dare to step forward. Hesitation trembles at that. Every hesitation you allow builds the weight of the moment against you. Every delay thickens the fog of doubt. Every excuse you tell yourself builds a cage so solid you can no longer see the door. And that is the cruel, beautiful truth. Hesitation is always present, always polite, always patient, waiting for the precise moment to make you believe it was your choice, when really, It's been stealing from you all along. You ever notice how warning signs creep into your life quietly, almost politely, like they're giving you a chance to prepare? They don't scream or demand attention. They don't bang on your door with urgency. No, they show up as a whisper, a little itch in your mind, a subtle unease in your chest, and you convince yourself it's nothing. You shrug it off. You laugh it away. You distract yourself. You pretend the small tremor of reality brushing against your life isn't there. But that's the trick. That little whisper, that small warning, it's not nothing. It's the first stitch in a pattern that, if ignored, will unravel your entire world. The cruel joke of warning signs is that they're patient. They don't demand immediate attention. They give you time, a tiny window to act, to listen, to respond. But people are excellent at ignoring that time. They convince themselves the discomfort is temporary, that it's a passing thought, that it will fade on its own. And while they convince themselves, the warning grows stronger, sharper, more insistent, building momentum behind the scenes while they pretend to be safe. Ignoring it doesn't erase it. It only amplifies the consequences. And there's something fascinating about how the mind works in these moments. The second a warning creeps into awareness, something in you tries to hide from it. Your instincts know, deep down, that it matters, that it's personal, that it demands action. But fear steps in, disguised as logic. It's nothing, it says. Don't overreact. Maybe it's not real. And you nod, because denial is comfortable. Comfort is cozy. Comfort is the lullaby that lets you pretend the storm won't hit while it's already gathering clouds above your head. Warning signs aren't fair. They don't come at convenient times. They don't arrive when you're ready or prepared or in control. They arrive when you're distracted, tired, fragile, when the edges of your mind are fraying just enough to make you ignore them. And that's what makes them dangerous. They don't just warn you, they test you. They see how long you'll wait, how many excuses you'll make, how far you'll push before the truth forces itself through. And if you keep pushing it away, it escalates. What started as a whisper becomes a nudge, becomes a tap, becomes a shove, becomes a strike that you can no longer dodge. The irony is exquisite. The people who ignore warnings the most are usually the ones who scream the loudest when consequences hit. They act shocked, blindsided, helpless, as if life betrayed them. But life didn't betray them. They betrayed themselves. They chose to ignore the whispers, to walk past the flickers of light before the darkness arrived, to pretend the signs were coincidences, until the moment arrived when pretending no longer worked. And then the consequences are merciless. They don't negotiate. They don't excuse. They don't soften because you're scared or unready. What's even more terrifying is how personal warning signs are. They target exactly what you need to hear, exactly what you've been avoiding, exactly the cracks in your armor that you've tried to hide. They're precise, surgical. They know which buttons to press to wake you up. And yet most people still turn away, because turning is easier than facing the truth. They want comfort. They want delay. They want life to play out like a movie where the warning fades into the background. But life doesn't play by those rules. Ignoring it is a choice, and that choice has a cost. And the consequences don't wait politely. They grow while you delay. They accumulate in silence. They sharpen. They wait for the perfect moment to make their presence undeniable. And by the time you notice, it's no longer a warning. It's a problem, a storm, a reckoning, a lesson delivered in force, because the gentle approach was wasted on your hesitation. That's the cruel elegance of it. Warnings are mercy. Ignoring them is chaos. Every time you ignore a warning, you give life permission to raise the stakes. You allow what could have been manageable to become overwhelming. You train reality to speak louder, to push harder, to make you listen when it's no longer polite. And that's how small things become crises, and quiet signals become unavoidable storms. The warning was there all along. You just refused to hear it. And so the whisper grows. The nudge becomes a tap. The tap becomes a shove. The shove becomes a strike. Life doesn't forget the warnings you ignore. It escalates them until they are impossible to overlook. The lesson is cruel, sharp, unrelenting, and entirely your responsibility, because the signs were always there, waiting for your attention. You ever notice how problems have this remarkable ability to hide in plain sight? They don't arrive with a siren or flashing lights. No, that would be too obvious, too polite. They sneak in like shadows, quiet, patient, convincing you they're nothing more than the noise of life, something to be ignored until later. And later is the trick, isn't it? Later is a lie you tell yourself to feel safe, to feel like control still exists, to feel like you've got time. But problems don't care about your schedule. They don't wait for convenience. They grow, they evolve. They take every second you give them to spread deeper into your life, until finally, one day, you can't ignore them anymore. The cruel beauty of it is how seductive ignoring problems can be. The mind loves to distract itself, to convince you that avoidance is smart, that turning your back is clever, that pretending something isn't there makes it harmless. You tell yourself, it's fine, I'll deal with it later, it's not urgent. And while you're busy convincing yourself of safety, the problem is sharpening its edges, digging its claws deeper, rehearsing the chaos it will unleash when the time comes. Ignoring it doesn't diminish the threat, it strengthens it. It waits patiently while you sleep, eat, laugh, live, unaware of the trap you've planted for yourself. And the most insidious part? Problems grow in silence. They don't shout at first. They whisper, a little discomfort here, a little tension there, subtle reminders that something is wrong, and you ignore it. You wave it off. You tell yourself you're overreacting. You distract yourself with anything to avoid facing the truth. That whisper is mercy. That whisper is opportunity. And you step over it, blind, thinking that ignoring it means safety. But the whisper is patient. It knows your patterns. It knows your weaknesses. It waits until the moment you think you're ready, and then it explodes. Humans have this funny habit of pretending their problems will vanish if they close their eyes, if they turn away, if they bury themselves in comfort. But reality doesn't play by those rules. What you ignore becomes a force bigger than you imagined, stronger than you could anticipate, sharper than you thought it would be. It isn't waiting to test you. It's waiting to become inevitable. Every second you avoid it, it grows, evolves, multiplies. The small inconvenience becomes a mountain. The soft whisper becomes a roar. The manageable becomes unmanageable. And that is the punchline no one wants to admit. The things you run from don't disappear. They gather power while you pretend. And there's a twisted humor in watching people act surprised when the storm hits. They act blindsided, shocked, helpless, as if the chaos arrived out of nowhere, but it didn't. The storm was assembling itself for years while they ignored the warnings, brushed off the whispers, laughed at the discomforts, pretending they were trivial. Every ignored problem, every delayed action, every lie you tell yourself about control and timing is a stitch in the net that eventually traps you. And the irony is exquisite, isn't it? You spend all this time thinking you're clever, only to discover you've been nurturing the very thing that will break you. Problems grow exponentially when ignored. The moment you refuse to deal with the first sign, the first warning, the first discomfort, you're choosing to face a version of it later that's bigger, heavier, more ruthless. And the timing? Perfect. Life has a way of delivering consequences when you're least prepared, when your defenses are down, when your attention is split, when your strength feels stretched thin. That's when the truth hits hardest. That's when the avoided problem becomes unavoidable. And by then, it's no longer a problem, it's a reckoning. Ignoring your problems is never neutral. It's not a pause. It's not a choice-free action. Every time you turn your back, every time you pretend, every time you delay, you give life permission to escalate the side consequences. You plant seeds for chaos. You invite the storm, and you do it with the naive belief that somehow later will be easier, that somehow you will be stronger, that somehow reality will be kinder. But reality doesn't negotiate. Reality doesn't wait. Reality doesn't apologize. And the problems you ignore don't forget they sharpen, multiply, grow teeth, and one day, without warning, they strike with precision. The irony is ruthless. You ignore a problem to protect yourself, to keep life manageable, to keep peace of mind, and all the while, that very problem is crafting the moment that will take everything from you if you continue to ignore it. And that is the ultimate lesson. What you refuse to face now will face you later, louder, harder, heavier, more unforgiving, and completely indifferent to your excuses. You ever notice how the night gets louder when a deadline creeps up behind you? It's funny. People hear the ticking clock, but they pretend it's just background noise. They scroll, they sigh, they say, "I'll get serious later." But tonight, oh, tonight is different, because there's a whisper slipping through the cracks of this moment, calling your name with a weight you can feel on your bones. A whisper that says before 11:50 p.m. something is shifting, something is tightening its grip around your fate, urging you, pushing you, daring you to open your eyes before the hour runs out. You ever notice how a clock can look completely harmless until someone tells you to pay attention to it? Suddenly those little ticking sounds feel louder, sharper, almost like they're whispering your name with every second that slips away. That's what happens when life gives you a time limit. It's not the time that scares you. It's the way it exposes you. Because the moment someone says asterisk before 11:50 p.m. asterisk, your mind starts running, tripping, stumbling over itself, wondering why the time matters, why asterisk asterisk you asterisk asterisk matter, why this moment has suddenly been pulled into the spotlight. And that's the funny thing, isn't it? You weren't worried about the clock until it started looking back at you, until it felt like it wasn't counting hours. It was counting your hesitation. Hesitation is such a beautiful little monster. It doesn't roar. It doesn't chase. It just sits in the corner of your head, tapping its fingers, waiting for you to second-guess yourself. And every time you do, it smiles that quiet little smile, the kind that tells you it's won again. But when a moment comes with urgency attached, hesitation starts to panic. Because urgency doesn't wait. Urgency doesn't negotiate. Urgency doesn't gently knock on your door and ask if you're free. No. Urgency kicks the door open, turns on all the lights, and says, asterisk, up, now, asterisk, and. Suddenly, hesitation doesn't feel so powerful anymore. Suddenly, the thing you've been ignoring, avoiding, burying under excuses, it crawls right to the surface. People like to pretend that time is just numbers on a screen. But time is pressure dressed up as seconds. Time is a mirror that shows you exactly how long you've been running from yourself. And when someone tells you there's a moment coming, a message you need to see before the hands hit 11:50, that pressure tightens. Oh, it tightens in all the right ways. Not to break you, but to expose you. To show you that deep down, you know you're not doing what you could. You know you've been drifting, delaying, telling yourself later as if later is guaranteed. But deadlines have a way of cutting through your little illusions, don't they? And there's something else, something people don't like to admit. When you hear a specific time, it feels personal. It feels aimed. Like someone reached into the noise of your life, found your name, and said, asterisk, this one's for you, asterisk. And that's when your heartbeat changes. That's when your breathing shifts. Because suddenly it feels like you're being watched, guided, pushed towards something you've been too scared to face. It's not the clock that's chasing you. It's the truth you've been dodging. You ever notice how your mind wakes up when it thinks it's running out of time? Decisions you've delayed for months, suddenly they matter. Fears you've been hiding, suddenly they get loud. Dreams you've shelved, suddenly they start knocking from the inside. Because urgency wakes the parts of you that comfort kept asleep. Comfort whispers, stay where you are. Urgency snarls, move. And you can pretend you don't hear it. You can pretend it's nothing. You can pretend the ticking means absolutely zero. But deep down you feel it. You feel that nudge, that pull, that strange little spark that makes you sit up a little straighter. And that's what this moment is really about. Not the time, not the number, not the clock creeping toward midnight. It's about what the urgency awakens in you. It's about the hesitation it exposes, the truth it drags out of the shadows. Because if the clock wasn't pointed at you, you wouldn't feel this uneasy little shiver down your spine. You wouldn't feel this sense that something is aligning, shifting, preparing to collide with your life in a way you can't ignore. The clock isn't counting time. It's counting your hesitation. It's counting how long you've avoided the calling that's been tugging at your ribs. It's counting the seconds before you finally stop pretending you don't feel it. You know what's funny? People spend their whole lives chasing comfort like it's some kind of treasure chest buried under their pillow. Soft routines, soft excuses, soft little lies they tell themselves just to get through another day without changing anything. Comfort is cozy, predictable, warm, like a blanket wrapped a little too tightly around your throat. It keeps you calm while it slowly takes away every reason you had to rise. And the best part? You don't even notice it happening. You call it peace. You call it stability. But really, it's just you trading your fire for a lukewarm existence. But urgency, oh, urgency is nothing like that. Urgency kicks the door open in the middle of the night. Urgency cracks its knuckles and laughs in your face. Urgency doesn't care about how tired you are, or what's on your schedule, or how long you've been meaning to start. Urgency is rude, impatient, uncomfortable, and that's why you fear it. Not because it's dangerous, but because it exposes everything that comfort has been hiding from you. You ever notice how urgency makes you feel alive in ways comfort never could? One sharp moment of pressure, and suddenly your eyes widen, your heart thumps a little too hard, and you start seeing things you've ignored for months. Your excuses sound stupid, your delays look embarrassing, your fears shrink into little shadows, because urgency doesn't whisper, it screams. It drags truth into the light whether you're ready or not. And that's the thing about this moment. It's not coming gently. It's not wrapped in velvet. It's not arriving with soft music and warm lighting. No, it's coming with a spotlight, with a siren, with a cold wind that hits your spine and makes you stand up straight. Because this moment isn't for your comfort, it's for your awakening. You've been sleeping behind your own eyes for too long, drifting through days like a ghost, pretending you're waiting for the right time. But when urgency steps in, the whole idea of a right time gets tossed out the window. Pressure has this incredible way of revealing what's already broken, not to break you more, but to show you exactly where you need to strengthen. You've been acting like you're made of glass, tiptoeing around your own potential. But urgency laughs at your glass. It taps on it, knocks on it, pushes against it until you either shatter or transform. And that's why this moment feels different, because comfort didn't warn you about what's coming. But urgency doesn't hide the truth. It exposes it. You've been feeling it, haven't you? That strange tightening in your chest, that restless energy in your hands, that quiet suspicion that something is shifting in your life. Not something small, not something subtle, something big, something that won't wait for your approval. And comfort keeps telling you, relax, you're fine. But urgency nudges you and says, look again. And when you do, you see the cracks in the walls you built, the cracks in your logic, the cracks in the story you've been repeating to justify staying exactly where you are. Life never sends urgency without a problem. Reason. It doesn't tap you on the shoulder unless it's trying to pull you towards something you're not prepared for but absolutely capable of. Comfort blocks that message. Urgency delivers it with a slap. And that slap, that jolt, that spark that shoots through your nerves when you realize time is running out, that is the truth rising to the surface. You ever wonder why the most important moments in your life always seem to show up at the worst possible times? It's because comfort will never let you grow willingly. You'll never wake up one morning and say, today's a great day to face everything I've avoided for years. No, life has to corner you. Pressure has to build. Urgency has to bite into your nerves just enough to make you move. Because without that tension, without that heat, you'd settle for the same small version of yourself forever. But urgency is the great revealer. It shows you your strength, your hunger, your fear, your truth. And the truth is simple. The moment you're being pulled toward right now, it's not here to comfort you. It's here to uncover you. It's here to strip away the illusions you've wrapped around yourself like safety nets. Because urgency reveals what comfort has been hiding from you, and what it's been hiding is the real you clawing to get out. You ever notice how the biggest warnings in life never show up with flashing lights or blaring alarms? No, that would be too easy, too obvious. Life likes to play a different game, a quieter one. It whispers, it nudges, it gives you little signs, little moments, little shifts in the air that make your instincts twitch. But you shrug them off because they don't look dramatic enough. You wait for thunder, but life gives you a tiny tap on the shoulder. And that tap, that whisper, that subtle message, that's the real danger. Because when a message comes softly, gently, quietly, you don't treat it seriously. And that's exactly how people end up blindsided, broken, wondering how they never saw the storm coming. Life always whispers before it screams. That's the rule nobody talks about. It sends you hints that something is coming, a change, a push, a challenge, a breakthrough, a collision with your own destiny. But because it doesn't feel explosive enough, you slide right past it. You convince yourself it's nothing, just a feeling, just a thought, just a coincidence. But inside, deep inside, where the truth sits like a coiled animal, you know something is shifting. You feel the tension in your ribs. You feel that strange awareness in your bones. You feel the pull, And yet, you ignore it, because the whisper didn't scare you enough. But whispers aren't meant to scare you. They're meant to warn you, to prepare you, to give you a chance to act before the real weight drops. Life is generous like that. It gives you a soft version of the truth before it hands you the hard one. But people have this wonderful talent for ignoring the quiet moments that matter the most. They think if it were important, it would be louder. Oh, but that's the trick. By the time it gets loud, it's already too late. You know what makes the whisper so dangerous? It's polite. It doesn't force you. It invites you. It gives you a choice. It says, look closer. And your fear says, maybe later. And you choose later every single time. Later becomes a habit. Later becomes a lifestyle. Later becomes your slow motion downfall. Until one day the whisper stops being a whisper. It sharpens. It grows teeth. It becomes a scream that shakes the floor under your feet. And then you wonder how you missed the signs. How you didn't notice the shift in the atmosphere. How you didn't recognize the opportunity or the danger or the blessing staring you right in the face. But you did notice. You just didn't respect it. You waited for something louder, something unmistakable, something dramatic enough to force your hand. But that's not how life works. It waits. It watches. It gives you a chance to respond to the subtle warning before it hands you the consequences of ignoring it. There's something unsettling about a whisper, something unsettling because it feels personal, targeted, like it's meant specifically for you. And that's exactly why you run from it, because if you acknowledge it, you have to acknowledge that your life is nudging you forward, that something is calling you to wake up, to move, to make a choice you've been putting off. A whisper asks for your courage. A scream demands it. That's why the whisper matters more. And when destiny has something to tell you, it rarely comes shouting at first. Oh no. It tiptoes. It leans in close. It brushes against your awareness. It tests you. It wants to see if you're paying attention, if you're awake, if you care enough about your own future to listen before the world has, to shake you by the shoulders. People always say they want signs. They want guidance. They want a message that's crystal clear. But when the sign comes quietly in the form of intuition, discomfort, a gut feeling, a strange coincidence, a sudden spark of thought, they pretend it doesn't count. They act blind. They act busy. They act unready. But destiny doesn't care about your excuses. If you won't listen to the whisper, it will send the scream. And the scream, oh, the scream is never gentle. That's the pattern. First the whisper, then the push, then the shove. And if you still don't move, then comes the moment that breaks your illusion of control, the moment that rearranges your world without your permission, the moment you realize the whisper was the gift and the scream was the consequence. Life whispers before it screams. And right now, whether you admit it or not, you hear something calling you, something stirring, something shifting the air around you, like a warning wrapped in velvet. And you can pretend it's nothing. You can pretend you're imagining it. But the whisper always comes for a reason. And if you ignore it, well, you already know what happens when it turns into something louder. You ever notice how hesitation has this strange way of dressing itself up like safety? Like it whispers in your ear, wait, think, hold on, maybe later. And you actually believe it's protecting you. But hesitation isn't a shield. It's a trap wearing a polite smile. It stands between you and everything you were meant to touch, everything you were meant to become. It's the quiet assassin of every dream you've ever had. And the funniest part? It doesn't even have to kill the dream outright. It just delays you long enough that regret does the rest. When your name is spoken, when life, fate, destiny, whatever you want to call it, points at you and says asterisk, you, right now, asterisk. Hesitation is the first thing that panics. It knows it's about to lose control. Because when a calling appears, you feel it. You feel that spark, that pulse, that shift in your heartbeat. Something inside you sits up straight, wide awake, whispering asterisk, this is for me, asterisk, and hesitation hates that. It rushes in, throwing excuses like confetti, you're not ready, you're not worthy, you're not strong enough, you're not prepared. Oh, hesitation is very dramatic when it feels threatened. But here's the thing. A calling doesn't wait for your readiness. It doesn't tap you on the shoulder when everything is convenient. It shows up when you're messy, confused, scared, unbalanced, and halfway convinced your life is a joke. Because callings aren't about who you are in the moment, they're about who you're capable of becoming the moment you stop hesitating. And that's why hesitation is dangerous. It takes that spark meant to light your path and convinces you to hide it under your doubt until it burns out. You know what hesitation really is? It's the doorway to regret. Every time you pause when you should move, every time you stall when you should step forward, you stand at that doorway and stare at a future you might never get to meet. And regret is merciless. It waits for you at the end of every maybe tomorrow, every not yet, every what if I fail. It grows in the spaces hesitation creates. It feeds on the moments you let slip away. And by the time you realize what you lost, it's already too late to grab it back. There's a certain cruelty in hesitation. Not loud cruelty, quiet cruelty. The kind that sneaks up on you over years, not seconds. It convinces you that delaying is harmless, that waiting is wise, that thinking twice is responsible. And meanwhile, life is moving, shifting, opening doors that won't stay open forever. Opportunities don't orbit you endlessly like loyal planets. They swing by, fast, sharp, brief, and hesitation keeps your feet glued to the ground while the moment races past. And when a moment is truly meant for you, when it has your name carved into its bones, it doesn't feel like any ordinary moment. There's pressure in the air, electricity beneath your skin, a weird sense that the world is holding its breath, waiting to see what you'll do. That's not coincidence. That's alignment. That's life placing a key in your hand and watching to see if you'll freeze or turn it. And hesitation is the voice that tells you not to move, not to try, not to risk anything at all. But here's the truth most people choke on. The moment you hesitate, the moment you look over your shoulder instead of forward, the moment you let fear take the wheel, that moment starts the slow death of your own potential. You lose the rhythm, you lose the momentum, you lose the fire that was just beginning to rise. Because hesitation doesn't just slow you down, it cuts you off from the version of yourself that was ready to leap. You ever feel that ache in your chest after you walk away from something you knew was meant for you? That heavy, hollow feeling like you just stepped out of your own destiny. That ache is the cost of hesitation. It's the echo of a road you were supposed to take, and it stays with you. It sits in your memory like a bruise you keep pressing to see if it still hurts. And when that kind of moment comes, a moment that calls your name with unmistakable force, hesitation should be the first thing you silence. Because your calling won't argue with your excuses. It won't wrestle with your fears. It won't wait for you to stop doubting yourself. It'll simply move on to someone else bold enough to step forward. Your hesitation is the exact doorway regret walks through. Every time you freeze, Regret takes another step closer, and once it reaches you, it never leaves. You ever notice how people treat warning signs like background noise? They see them, they feel them, they sense them, but they pretend the signs aren't really there, because acknowledging a warning means acknowledging the responsibility to act, and that scares them more than the danger itself. So they look straight at the red flag, blink twice, shrug, and say, "Nah, I'm imagining it," as if pretending blindness somehow changes the truth, as if closing your eyes makes the fire on the stove go away. Humans are funny like that. They think ignoring a problem protects them from it, but all it really does is give the problem time to grow teeth. Warning signs don't disappear just because you pretend not to see them. They simply get louder, sharper, hungrier, and every time you ignore one, you give life permission to raise the stakes. That's the part nobody likes to admit, that the first warning is always the gentlest. The first sign is always the smallest, softest, most merciful. A quiet shift in your gut, a tiny thought that doesn't feel normal, a pattern repeating itself one too many times, a strange tension in the air that makes the hairs on your arm stand up. That's the whisper stage, the stage where life gives you a chance to catch the truth before it becomes a threat. But you, being human, you brush it off, you laugh it away, you drown it in distraction, because facing it would mean facing yourself, and that's not something most people do willingly. So the sign shows up again, louder this time. Maybe it's a problem you thought you'd solved creeping back in. Maybe it's a person showing you the same wound they've always shown. Maybe it's an opportunity slipping just a little further from your grasp. The signs keep stacking no matter how many times you pretend they're invisible. And that's when it starts to sting, not because the signs changed, but because you've run out of excuses that make ignoring them feel clever instead of cowardly. You ever notice how life escalates when you don't listen? First it knocks gently, then it taps harder, then it pounds, then it breaks the door. And by the time it breaks the door, it's not asking you to notice anymore. It's forcing you to deal with everything you tried to avoid. Warning signs aren't punishments. They're mercy. They're life handing you the truth in small pieces so you don't have to choke on it all at once. But when you ignore those pieces, life stops slicing and starts throwing the whole thing at your chest. And there's something darkly amusing about how people act surprised when everything finally collapses. They say things like, "I didn't see it coming," or "How could this happen?" when deep down they know exactly how. They saw it, they felt it, they sensed it, but they convinced themselves that if they didn't speak it, if they didn't acknowledge it, the truth would back off out of politeness. As if truth works like that. As if reality cares about your comfort. You know why warning signs feel so uncomfortable? Because they're mirrors. They show you what you don't want to face: your weaknesses, your fears, your patterns, your denial, your unresolved chaos. And humans hate mirrors that don't flatter them. They prefer reflections that lie a little, ones that soften the edges, hide the bruises, smooth out the damage. But warning signs show you the raw version of your life, the version that needs fixing, the version silence can no longer protect. And the more you ignore them, the more you train life to raise its voice. You teach fate that you only respond to pain. You teach destiny that you only move when the ground collapses under your feet. So the signs grow sharper, the lessons grow harder, the consequences grow heavier, because that's what ignoring truth creates: escalation. You ever wonder why the same problems keep returning? Why certain people keep hurting you the same way? Why the same cycles replay like a broken record? It's because you didn't listen the first time, or the second, or the 10th, and life persistent as ever, keeps throwing the sign at you until you finally stop pretending nothing's wrong. Warning signs don't disappear. They transform. They shift from gentle nudges to violent reminders. They shift from whispers to alarms. And by the time they become alarms, it's no longer about preventing damage, it's about surviving it. The truth is simple. Every time you ignore a warning, you sign up for a harder version of the same lesson. And life always delivers the lesson, whether you're ready or not. You ever notice how problems don't really vanish when you ignore them? No. They just sit there, quiet, patient, sharpening their claws in the dark, while you convince yourself everything is fine. That's the beautiful little illusion. People love the idea that avoiding something somehow weakens it. But what you ignore now doesn't soften. It doesn't crumble. It doesn't fade. It evolves. It grows. It studies you. And then, when the timing feels perfect, it comes back as a storm big enough to snap your spine in half. That's the punchline no one wants to hear. The things you run from don't die. They wait. What you ignore becomes the architect of your downfall. It's like planting a seed and pretending you didn't. You can close your eyes, turn away, walk off, but the thing still grows. Roots still dig deeper. Branches still rise higher. And one day you look back and realize the tiny seed you refused to deal with is now a tree blocking your entire path. That's how life works. Small problems don't stay small. Small warnings don't stay soft. Small decisions don't stay harmless. Everything ignored expands, especially the things that scare you. You ever watch someone avoid the truth? They smile a little too tightly. Their voice shakes just a bit. They insist everything's fine, even though you can see the cracks forming in their world like spider webs. They're not fooling anyone, except themselves. And that's the tragedy. The biggest lies are the ones people tell themselves to avoid confrontation. I can fix it later. It won't get worse. It'll sort itself out. These aren't thoughts. They're lullabies. Little songs people sing to put their fear back to sleep. But fear doesn't sleep. It waits. It watches. It grows teeth. And when the storm finally hits, that's when reality laughs. Because storms don't come out of nowhere. They come from every warning ignored, every sign dismissed, every instinct silenced. They come from that moment you felt something was wrong but told yourself you were overreacting. They come from the time you let someone cross a boundary and convinced yourself it wasn't a big deal. They come from the dream you abandoned and acted like it wouldn't haunt you. Storms are built from silence, your silence. You ever feel that tightening in your chest? That tension in your jaw, that little knot in your stomach when you avoid something you know you shouldn't? That's your mind screaming through your body. That's your intuition trying to shake you awake. But instead of listening, you press it down. You numb it. You distract yourself. You pretend you don't feel the shift in the air. But the body keeps score. Every ignored truth stores itself somewhere inside you. Until one day, the weight becomes too heavy to pretend away. And that's when the storm hits. Not gently, not politely, but with the full force of everything you refuse to face. It hits you in your relationships, in your peace, in your confidence, in your purpose. It hits you where you're weakest because that's where avoidance has carved the deepest cracks. And suddenly, you're overwhelmed, broken, drowned in problems that should have been dealt with long before they reached this size. But that's how storms work. They arrive when you've exhausted all your chances to prevent them. What you ignore becomes the storm that breaks you later. It doesn't matter whether it's a habit, a fear, a person, a truth, a dream, a mistake, a responsibility. If you turn your back on it, it doesn't disappear. It gathers power. It builds momentum. It becomes something your future self will have to fight 10 times harder. And the worst part? The storm always comes at the moment you least expect it. Not when you're strong. Not when you're ready. It comes when you're tired, when you're distracted, when you're vulnerable. Because life doesn't wait for your convenience. It waits for your weakness. That's why ignoring something is never neutral. It's never harmless. It's an invitation, a welcome mat for chaos. A silent agreement that you'll deal with a bigger, harsher, louder version of the same problem later. And later always comes, in the form of consequences, in the form of breakdowns, in the form of storms that don't ask permission to destroy the things you care about. What you ignore now becomes the storm that breaks you later.